This is the Cannabis News with Rick Thompson on 420 Post. Let's begin. Well, Michigan sold $105 million in cannabis during February. That's $38.1 million from medical, $67 million in recreational sales. It's a 48% jump in medical cannabis sales from last year, although those totals are down from the high sales point in medical of June 2020. Adult use sales were up hugely from last year's February, but that really means nothing as the market was just opened up in December, and in February it was just a 3-month-old baby. The important breakdown is product type. In both medical and adult use markets, flower is the power. Sales of flower and trim were almost triple the sales for vape carts at 12 mil, and the next largest segment was edibles at 11 million. Flower and shake on the medical side were nearly half of all sales in February and were 56% of all sales in the adult use market last month. I have it on good authority that March's cannabis sales will be a record-setting tally. Keep listening for more details. Now, it's a continuous fight out there for cannabis companies in municipalities where medical sales are allowed, but not adult use. Traverse City is the latest Michigan community to end up in hot legal water over their discriminatory methodology for enabling recreational cannabis sales. By only allowing a few of the medical stores to sell adult use cannabis, they've invited expensive lawsuits from those denied the opportunity. Detroit's facing such a dilemma as they tried to institute licensing caps and have been highly selective about who gets to do what in their city. The list of communities with big cannabis licensing problems is itself a big cannabis problem. We're talking about Warren, Leone Township, some Oakland County communities, and a bunch of others, all fighting to do what they want their own way. But ultimately, it'll be decided by judges and the voters. But until then, cannabis retail operations will continue to expand within communities where city councils do not limit opportunity. Now, we all remember EVALI, which is the illness contracted by people who use vapor cartridges infused with a vitamin thickener for commercial purpose. Now, vitamin E acetate would be banned from vaping products containing medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, or nicotine under a 3-bill package reported today by the House Regulatory Reform Committee. It's sponsored by Rep. Hamoud from Dearborn. Vitamin E acetate is used in a number of other products like makeup and food. It's only dangerous when inhaled. The bill numbers are 4249, 4250, and 4251, sponsored by Hamoud and Rep. Joseph Bellino from Monroe. The Regulatory Reform Committee voted unanimously to send the bills to the full House just this morning. The 3-bill package is a reproduction of legislation proposed last year and which was approved then by House Judiciary Committee and the full House before dying in the Senate. Now, this isn't all good news, everyone. Before approving the bills, the committee amended them to outlaw additives to vaping products that are not FDA approved. Many vape manufacturers infuse their carts with terpenes and other cannabis-derived chemicals, which are not approved by the USDA or the FDA. Hamoud said even after the CDC had identified vitamin E acetate as dangerous, the state still found a batch of vaping products that tested positive for the chemical. Final story today. The cannabis plant evolved 28 million years ago at a specific area on the Tibetan Plateau. That's according to an article in Vegetation History and Archaeobotany titled Cannabis in Asia. Now, the center of origin and early cultivation based on the synthesis of subfossil pollen and archaeobotanical studies, this study aims at establishing the oldest common ancestor of the cannabis plant. Talk about a landrace plant. The modern cannabis plant thrived in arid, steppe-like conditions caused by tectonic formation of the northeastern Tibetan Plateau. That's the general vicinity of Qinghai Lake around 28 million years ago. This co-localizes within the first steppe community that evolved in Asia, said the team. It's important because that means the earliest representative of human beings had cannabis already. Humans have utilized cannabis plants for at least 27,000 years that we know about. This new study proves a richer understanding of not only when the first cannabis plants evolved, but also when humanoids began first using them as medicines and within ritual environments. The cannabis origin site is central in the newspapers, situated only a few hundred kilometers from the karst cave that was once inhabited by an ancient relative of Homo sapiens, the Denisovians. Now, it's thought that because the Earth was in the midst of the Ice Age, they may have transported cannabis seeds from another place, which is supported by cannabis pollen having been discovered in other caves with Denisovian occupants. That was a lot of science, but I'm sure you got what I was talking about. That's it for the cannabis news. I am Rick Thompson on 420 Post. Thanks for listening. Back to you, Mike.
Wow, thank you, Professor Thompson. That was a wonderful lecture. We appreciate
You are
that.
welcome.
So, but those Tibetan lamas, they knew what was going on 28 million years ago. All right.
Yeah.
Good for them. Talk about getting high, huh? All right. Speaking of getting high, but not right now, but we have Jamie Cooper coming in, and she's going to give us the cannabis community headlines. Take it away, Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So we have a lot going on. More and more events are hitting the calendars these days. First of all, I want to talk about our weekly virtual speed networking that we host every week for Michigan cannabis business professionals. If you go to connects.cincymag.com, you can see our list of events when you click on the Michigan Industry Networking Community. Under there, you'll see we host this event every week at 6 o'clock Eastern. Would love if you guys could join us tonight if you're a cannabis business professional. We also have some conferences and expos starting to hit the calendars. So coming up, we have the CannaCon event, which will be June 25th and 26th in Detroit. Yes, that's going to be face-to-face at this point. June 3rd is the virtual event that Benzinga will be putting on. They're staying virtual for now, but I think they're looking at possibly taking their event face-to-face at the end of the summer. And then the Michigan Cannabis Expo will be hosting their event. This is the event that we usually see in Birch Run. They'll be hosting it at the Soaring Eagle and Mount Pleasant on July 13th and 14th. And then MLive will be hosting another one of their virtual events sometime in June as well. And then the Cincy Magazine Golf Scrambled is slated for May 28th. We're going to hit the greens, and I know Ryan is here with us. I hear he's a pretty darn good golfer and keeps getting better, so you better watch out if you're he's shaking his head. You better watch out if you're planning to play. I hear he's the shark. And then I also want to invite all the ladies to a special event that we have tomorrow. It is a happy hour hosted by Lantern Cannabis and Flourish. It's called Not Your Average Happy Hour. It's free. It's an hour long, and they'll be doing a drink recipes. So we'll actually have like one. Flourish has one of their drink enhancers, which you can add it to a drink that may be non-alcoholic, which is what I do. And so they're going to kind of show us how to mix one of these drinks with their enhancers, and excited to have a happy hour with the ladies, a lot of ladies of Michigan. So that's all I have for what's coming or what's going on in the community right now.
All right. Well, it's good to see that. Well, I'm not sure what the new normal is going to be, but at least returning back to the idea of having real people in the room with you again. It's been so long, I've almost forgotten what that's like, So, but we're all suffering through that. So, Rick, I'm going to turn the show over to you, since all these folks that you're going to be talking to are, as you mentioned before we started, old friends of yours. So, Rick's getting the band back together, and so we're going to be talking about expungement. And so let's start with Ryan. Go ahead and unmute there, Ryan. And Rick, you got the ball.
Well, if there was a band, Ryan would be the bassist, that's for sure.
Oh,
the
nice.
Rhythm section, the backbone of the entire group. Josey would, of course, be the vocalist because you put the keyboard person up front. But Ryan Basore, of course, with Redemption Cannabis, he's internationally famous as a former cannabis POW and an entrepreneur here in the state. He's really the exemplary idea of what happens to somebody who makes good in the industry that dumped on them earlier in life. Welcome to 420Post, Ryan Basore.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Excited to be back. Second appearance, so thanks.
And of course, we have Josey Scoggin, as I mentioned earlier. Josey, with Sons and Daughters United. I mean, we could talk about that, but there's so much more to Josey than just Sons and Daughters. But for today's purpose, we're going to be talking about a brand new organization, which is kind of anchored by Sons and Daughters, and Josey and her never-ending well of energy. Josey, welcome to 420Post.
Oh yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I'm really excited to work with Ryan and with Josh to do this. I'm excited to talk about the expungement program, but my worst quality is that I don't stop talking. So I guess we should start with you guys.
No, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with your coffee cup, which features a picture of Bill Schuette with devil horns on it.
It's George Bush.
That is a...
That's George. That's Bush.
Is that George Bush?
Oh yeah, I have Ronald Reagan, I have Nixon, I have George W. Bush, and I'm waiting for my Trump cup. So I just didn't want anyone to think that, like.
That will probably be the most expensive one because he'll charge a lot for that. So
Yeah.
My friend makes them. So if you're interested in personalized cups, I wanted to buy one off eBay. They're $45. So my friend just made it for me.
I'm disappointed that's not a Bill Shooty cup, but I still think it's pretty cool. Thank
We have
you.
time. We can do what we want.
I know.
I want to dive right into this expungement stuff, and I really want to talk about what we're experiencing with the clean slate bills. So we have about 1,300 new offenses that can be expunged. So right now in Michigan, about 6.5% of people who are eligible for expungement actually have that expungement 5 years after their eligibility. Most of this is the barriers that are included, but a lot of it is people not understanding what their rights are and what they're able to do. We are so lucky to have Dana Nessel and Gretchen Whitmore on our team, and to bring in what is quite truly revolutionary legislation when we're talking about criminal justice reform. I had called Ryan and I wanted to do a COVID campaign in prisons. Sons and Daughters United does a lot of prison work. And I think that obviously reaching out to Ryan was the first best step. And he said, hey, yeah, I'll work with you on this campaign. And I'm looking for some people in Southwest Michigan to start doing expungements out that way. I'm from Benton Harbor, so, represent. So we bonded together and decided that not only was this something that was an obvious decision when we're talking about social equity and ways that we can give back or undo the harms of marijuana prohibition, but this was something that was a passion for the both of us. And so we just really hit the ground running. We got the application up. We hired attorneys within 2 weeks of that conversation. The application is live now, and we've expanded with the help of Covert Law to accept 60% of Michigan's counties. And when we're tying in also Barton Morris, and he's going to do some stuff in Metro Detroit. And Michigan is so weird in terms of Macomb and Oakland and Wayne County accounting for 40% of our overall population. And so, we are still consistently searching and trying to contract more attorneys in the Metro Detroit area. But at this point, we do serve an overwhelming majority of Michigan. And that is something that is, thanks to Josh Covert coming in and doing a variety of these things, but also thanks to Ryan funding it, because, that's where money.
Let me leap in real quick, Josey. For those who don't know what your group does, why don't you explain what Sons and Daughters, because this may be the first time they've heard about it, so go ahead and talk about it.
And also, Jose, why don't you throw a way for someone, maybe an attorney who's watching us, who'd like to help out with your project, how they can get a hold of you as well.
Yeah, so Sons and Daughters United started in 2013. I met my friend Ashley Duvall on the Capitol steps. She was oh God, am I gonna sob with makeup on? I don't know.
I was in prison with her brother, Jeremy.
Yes, and it was, her dad is in a lot worse prison than what Jeremy and Ryan were in. And all prisons are bad, but this one was specifically bad. But what she was doing was she was petitioning for the freedom for her dad and her brother, who were arrested on federal charges, just like Ryan was. And when I went to her house, what she was doing was she was paying for all of their credit card debt, so they didn't have bad credit when they came back. She was paying hundreds of dollars a week to talk to them on their phones. And so what we did at that moment was we decided we were going to create an organization that helped people stay connected to their loved ones in prison. We sent Ashley to see her dad 2 or 3 times. We pay for everything from JPay payments, video conferencing, phone calls, stationery, postage, and obviously travel expenses as well. We participate in every state in the United States. That does absolutely include Hawaii and Alaska as well. And what we see is that, here in America, 1 in 12 children will have a parent who's incarcerated throughout their lifetime, and it is damaging and it is traumatizing. My father was a recreational cocaine user. He spent majority of my life in prison, and I really didn't know who he was. My sister really didn't know who he was, and her mother, we couldn't afford to stay connected to him. And so I believe that this isn't something that is isolated. And what really sucks, I think, is that, sorry, I've been doing this now for, God, 8 years. God, I really am old. I've been doing this for 8 years now with sons and daughters, and I have not found that this is cool or rewarding or fun. It is just tragic and sad, and really what's happening with mass incarceration is destroying America in ways that people don't really know. We also have a program for people with disabilities, the Renee Wolf Memorial Grant. If anyone is familiar with Renee Wolf, it does have the same compassionate, overwhelming, welcoming grasp to it, which is if you have a disability and you have a need, we'll connect you, whether that be financially or emotionally, or however that is.
Let me jump in real quick here, Jose. When we start talking about kids and pediatric issues, people should know that Josey was the first pediatric patient in the state of Michigan approved for a medical card. Yep.
I wasn't into bragging, but I was the first minor patient in Michigan. I was 14, which is not really, kids, people are usually okay with giving kids with seizures, or at least now in 2021, seizures or cancer, medical marijuana. But when you have somebody who's just in a wheelchair, who's 14 years old, wearing a dope hat, it's not necessarily something that they were welcoming to or appreciative of.
No,
I didn't have to search for a doctor either. My geneticist, he's world renowned, Dr. Richard Poley, he sat me down in January. He was like, Josey, do you want to start medical marijuana? And I just was like, oh my God, this guy tested me. What am I going to do? And he was like, this is ridiculous. They were giving me fentanyl pops. I had gummy, like oxycodones. I had so many ridiculous things. At the time we were misdiagnosed, and I did have a timestamp of like 18 at that point. And so I was just, yeah, sure, whatever, but we have to find somebody else to do it. And he was like, no, I already know somebody else to do it. Like, this is something that I think is always going to work. My mom has reported using cannabis since the early 90s. Also, my mom, this might not be for the show, but my mom has reported using LSD, microdosing LSD, in replacement of her pain pills. She hasn't been on pain pills in about 20 years, which is revolutionary. So,
Jose, let me bring the story back though. I've started talking about pediatric patients so I could introduce Josh. Although I love you, Josey. Josh Covert is one of the first attorneys in the state of Michigan who really took up the cause of pediatric patients and the issues that they have, and fighting communities to allow them to be licensed there, fighting the state to protect the licenses that those kids had, and then defending doctors who were charged or considered to be violating the rules for talking to kids about cannabis. And I'd really like to introduce Michigan cannabis defender Josh Covert to the conversation. Welcome, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick. It's great to be here, and I'm really pleased to be talking about the expungements and things. This is great.
Now, Joseph's already laid out a bit of the program here, and Ryan helped out too. Can you explain what your role is in this new project?
Well, certainly, if we have to go to court for the traditional expungements, or even potentially on some of the new marijuana expungements, there may be a time where we will have to litigate certain issues and appear in court. And that's certainly one of the roles that I will be playing. I've worked on expungements, throughout my career for people. And so this is a great extension of that, being able to take advantage of these new expungement laws and really work towards getting more and more people with our clean record. And I'm really pleased to be working on that. So mostly I'll be doing the litigation aspect of it, and then also reviewing the files for eligibility and things like that when there's questions.
I think Josey mentioned that you're going to have your particular practice is going to cover about 60% of the state on behalf of this new organization. Is that correct?
That's probably about correct. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm willing to go to a pretty broad range. That's kind of been my practice throughout my career, is I as being somebody who will go anywhere in Michigan. So I've kind of designated my firm to a large number of counties where we needed someone. But I would tell anybody out there listening that if there is an attorney in your particular county or in your location, and maybe you're not one of the 60% we've identified, doesn't mean we wouldn't take your case. So if you've got a compelling reason, and even if you're in the UP, we could potentially make it work. It's certainly easier in places where we have things set up, but I'm flexible, and certainly with the right set of facts, I would certainly go up and help somebody out pretty much anywhere in Michigan.
Why don't we introduce the idea of the Great Lakes Expungement Network now, so people know what we're talking about? Ryan, you want to run with that real quick and kind of explain what that's all about?
Sure. The Great Lakes Expungement Network is Josey's wonderful brainchild, as she talked about, and I really wanted to get involved with this Clean Slate Act that hits April 11th. All these people that can get expunged, and my concern when I talked to Josey was, what about like a Berrien County? What about like a Cass County, a Livingston, where you're going to have prosecutors try to fight these and discourage people? So that's not the intent of any of this. So that's something I felt really strongly about in the Redemption Foundation. So like Josey said, we talked, and I said, hey, I've been talking about it with Josh Covert as well. And one thing that's real cool about this, you guys should know, Josey's Sons and Daughters office is in 1129 North Washington in Old Town Lansing. It's in the Covert Law Firm, and then that's where the Redemption Cannabis and Redemption Foundation is. So we're all based out of Old Town Lansing in the same building, and a lot of great stuff is happening out of this building right now. We're together on it, and I know me and Josh have been talking about it. Said, yeah, he's down. He's helped me before when I was with the MICA, go for free and go help with expungement and in Lansing when we needed him at the drop of a hat. So that's what it is. We're live, like Josey said. You can go to sonsanddaughtersunited.org and see the form. You can hit any of my social media, and we're going to be doing a big press release coming up here in the beginning of April, letting everybody know it. We have funding, and it's going to be coming from a lot of cannabis companies. So the cool thing is like as many apps as we get and as much help as we need, if we don't have the money, we're just going to go ahead and go out and get more money. For the cannabis companies looking to be good and looking to donate, here's say $5,000, and this is tangible. You're going to change 25 people's lives for the better with that donation. So we'll see where it goes, but we're excited. We're getting a lot of applications online, and we haven't really announced it yet. So it's going to be great for the state.
And I always, not to interrupt, Rick, but I always assume that people coming into the show may or may not have heard who the guests are. So why don't you real quick talk about your foundation that you have, and then we'll go back to the expungement.
Yep. It's the Redemption Foundation. 10% of my revenue from my cannabis brand Redemption goes into it. I have some partnerships with like ACT Labs that are really help to fund it as far as people that test with them. They give a portion. And then I got companies like the refinery in Kalamazoo that's starting to donate every month. So just people, it's building up. And we're helping people. We created the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition as well with the Last Prisoner Project, Norm Reamer from National Association of Defense Attorneys, the Cannabis Caucus. So we're doing that as well, but we're doing a lot of stuff. Rick's on my advisory panel, so is Josh Covert. Josey should be. We're trying to help anyone that's been affected by the war on cannabis in Michigan, whether you're in jail, whether you're out, and everything in between. So
no, I've got a quick clarifying question for Ryan, and then I'm going to go over to Josey. Ryan, there are some crimes in this clean slate bill that don't require prosecutorial approval. They just go right through. They just process them immediately. And that's what we had hoped for cannabis crimes. But some of these cannabis crimes have this additional step, this whole opportunity for appeal or opportunity for complaint by a local prosecutor. And that's unique to our cannabis crimes now, isn't it?
I believe so, Rick. I would talk to the lawyer or Josey on that one for sure.
Yeah, it's a real impediment. Jose, when you talked a little bit earlier, you talked about qualifying people, and obviously some people are better for this program than others. Tell our listeners what would qualify someone for this program so that they know whether or not that's something they could reach out for.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. So, in terms of eligibility for everyone is very confused right now because there's two things that are happening. In 2023, there is going to be an automatic expungement. You won't have to do anything. Your misdemeanor marijuana charges will be expunged. And those are things that would be legal today. So if you sold weed to your friend down the street, it wouldn't be legal today and it wouldn't be on this automatic list. But if you got a usage charge, like so many of my friends here in Benton Harbor have, or what I like to call walking while black charge, and they found some stems or something in there and you have some kind of weird possession that was under 2.5 ounces, or if you're growing less than 12 plants, all of this is pretty expungible automatically. So why wait? Anybody with a criminal record can tell you that those next 2 or 3 years are going to be long. This affects your ability to gain willful or wholeful employment, to gain safe housing, to go to your kids' school dance, to go to their bake sale, to take them on a field trip. There's a variety of things that people who already paid the time for their crime are still being penalized for. And so every second counts. With that being said, we are all in agreement that once you pay your time, you did your crime, we should help you, move on with your life. So in order to qualify for our program, you must have at least one marijuana charge. That marijuana charge, you have to complete your sentence unless it's a misdemeanor charge. But if it's a felony marijuana or a different kind of charge, it's got to be completed after 5 years. Then you can expunge it. With that being said, if you have other stuff on your record and you have, in addition to this marijuana charge, Josh is going to expunge it for you. While we're doing the work, we're going to get everything we can off your record. I think that's something that's really resonates with the Redemption Foundation, and I think even mostly with Josh as a person and definitely with Sons and Daughters United, is the idea of a second chance, or a third chance, or a fourth chance. The ability to live the American dream should not be eliminated just based on your criminal history. And so I encourage everybody who wants to get something expunged to apply. At worst, if this isn't your time today, then it might be your time in the future. We're constantly evolving. We are becoming more progressive and more open-minded when it comes to people who are incarcerated or people with criminal records. And also, real quick, I know I am talking a lot, but real quick, I do want to say that some things are not expungible. Things that carry life expense or lifelong sentences. So there are specific crimes that do that. You cannot expunge them regardless of what your sentence is. With that being said, Josh is thorough. He's quick. I send him stuff. He gets back to me in 30 minutes. I mean, we are here to expunge your records, apply. We got the money. It's going to be free fingerprinting, free application, free attorney fees. We're here to do it. We love Michigan.
Fantastic. Josh, you were mentioned a couple of times there. One of the most difficult things for people with expungement opportunities is knowing that the opportunity exists. Does the state provide any kind of a methodology to let people know that they could get this opportunity now? Or is it something where we just have to do the work to let people know that it's out there and hustle them up ourselves?
The state certainly doesn't do enough. I think of the statistics were on the old program, approximately 6% of people eligible for expungement actually went through with obtaining the expungement. And so I think that there shows that a lot of people don't know that this is out there. If people, I think, knew that it was possible to get an expungement and knew the process, we would have much higher numbers than that. Fortunately, the eligibility has now been increased. So many more people are now eligible for expungement, and that's a great thing. But unless people actually apply, those numbers aren't going to go up. So that's what we're here to do, is to make sure those numbers go up and make sure that we not only inform people about the expungement possibilities, but then also work with them to get it done without taking anything out of their pocket. So hopefully we can get those numbers to go up a lot. And then that's what we're here for.
Well, we'll do our part too. Let me leap in real quick. This show, between live and on demand, we do 1,500 to 2,000 people on Facebook, and then we plugged into most of the Facebook groups, and I distribute it through those groups. So we'll do our best to get the word out. Jamie, you've been nodding your head. I'm just going to ask real quick. You have any questions for anybody?
No, I'm just listening. I love the work that all of these guys are doing. It's such important work, and you know, Michigan loves them and is probably really grateful for the work that is being done. And thank you guys.
It's important to note, as Josh mentioned, that, and Josey actually mentioned, I believe, that this goes beyond just the cannabis sector itself. We may identify someone because of a cannabis crime, but they may have other things that happen to them that it's possible for this group to influence and to remove from the record. And it certainly seems like you're trying a robust program. Joe's, other than expungement, what else are you guys doing? I mean, Sons and Daughters has so many different services that you provide to people. I mean, it's a can of worms once we start talking about it.
It really is. It's something I started when I was 19 and I wanted to save the world. And if you guys remember me at that time, I was real crazy and I really haven't gotten any better. So,
No.
So what we started was we're looking at the laws and policies and how they adversely affect children, families, and young adults. What we find is that there's no shortage of issues when it comes to people with disabilities or people with criminal records or people who don't fit this box that society has created things for. And what I mean by that is there isn't adequate housing for either of us, right? So there's not places for people who get out of prison, who have criminal records to just go and rent. There's this variety of things and barriers that are in the way. They're often left to get or to choose housing that is unsafe, that is inadequate, and that is overpriced. The same thing happens for people with disabilities. And if you don't know, I am disabled. I'm mostly wheelchair bound since I had my daughter. I lost about 90% of my range of motion after I birthed her. And prior to that, I had been using arm crutches or using my crutches and for about 10 years or so. And so when you grow up in a place like Benton Harbor, it's not easy to adapt these progressive policies. But at the same time, it's not hard to question them because you're never really reaping the benefits, right? And so we wanted to create a system where we kind of fill in the gaps, where we provide for our parents, for our children. So Sons and Daughters United originally launched with our prison support campaign, and it was fantastic and it was phenomenal. And people were like giving me money to give to other people. I sent people all across this United States. I mean, it was heart-wrenching, their stories. And I got really personally involved in it. And it wasn't until the Ayanna Jones case, a 7-year-old girl in Detroit who was shot in a no-knock raid, where I started to realize that this is never going to end. We're never going to, even if we change legislation, we're not going to change society in that same speed. And so we quickly became a 501c3 instead of a 501c4. And all that means is when we were a 501c4, we wanted to change the laws and make it better. But when we became a 501c3, we want to provide services for the people that are falling through those cracks. And in 2017, we launched a revolutionary I'm so proud of it, scholarship program where we provide $5,000 a semester to anyone affected by the aid elimination policy. If you believe it or not, Trump did repeal this policy this December, and it is not something that is currently active. However, it doesn't change the people who have already been eliminated, who are already affected. So it just changes people who get misdemeanor drug crimes from here on out. So what happens if you're charged with any kind of misdemeanor drug crime, aside from alcohol, is that you lose your ability to apply for financial aid, you lose your ability to get FAFSA or student loans that you have to pay back. And if you're in the middle of that semester, you have to pay all that stuff back. And so there's really great organizations that will help you navigate things, or at least give you a venue to complain about it. I think Students for Sensible Drug Policy was obviously my first and favorite choice, but there was nowhere to get actual real life money to pay for an American university, which is outrageously priced, as we all know. So we launched that campaign at the DPA conference, and it was fantastic. We have an angel donor here locally who provides and staffs that or funds that entire program. It's still active. So if you have been applying, you want to go back to school, you can't because you smoked weed when you were 19, hit me up. Yay.
Josey, it's an amazing thing that you're doing. So many different ways that you're helping people. Josh, I wanted to come back to you. We talked on a previous interview how, and again, Josh was one of the most active criminal defense attorneys in the state of Michigan prior to the MRTMA passing in November of 2018. But since then, those cases where the state was pursuing caregivers essentially fell off, right, Josh?
Yeah. I went from, getting almost, let's say, a call a day probably about, somebody that got pulled over for possession or a caregiver that got raided or a dispensary. I had a full caseload for many years, unfortunately. But since MIRTMA, I'd say it's rare that I get a call. I've probably had, 3 or 4 calls involving caregiver raids since November of 2018. That would have been a week's worth, back in 2018. So it's great to see that we're seeing less charges. But unfortunately, I still do take cases every now and then. I think the prosecuting attorneys are still overreaching in certain counties, and certain task forces are still overreaching. I don't really see it as much at the local police department level or sheriffs. It's mostly these narcotics enforcement teams or the marijuana, tobacco, and Michigan's marijuana tobacco enforcement team, the state police. And I see a couple every now and then, but I'm very thankful that I don't get those calls like I used to.
You're kind of fed me right into my next statement. The fact is we don't have raids on caregivers as much anymore, but there's still lots of ways in which the system is not tolerant of cannabis users or cannabis businesses at all. You still face those kind of issues too.
I do. I currently have a case pending where I certainly believe the person should be charged with at best a misdemeanor under MIRTMA. But for whatever reason, the prosecuting attorney seems to act like MIRTMA isn't there. And then they're charging my client with manufacturing marijuana, which I clearly think is a penalty and provision in MIRTMA that essentially would supersede that as far as marijuana goes. But we just started the court case out. I expect it to get worked out in favorable fashion. I don't see these felony charges sticking beyond the preliminary exam, but it's just an example of how, even though, we see it, much less cases, there still are some, because there are still some prosecuting attorneys that are stuck in, like, let's say, reefer madness or whatever.
And Ryan, you work a lot with Michigan Cannabis Industry Association and other lobbying firms that really are right in there in the legislative process in Lansing. Yep. And you're still seeing some resistance on the part of state legislators, even though we had an overwhelming support for the medical law, an overwhelming support for the legalization law, and there's been nothing but positivity associated with it ever since.
Yeah, it's still, we learned that a long time ago, is the politicians seem to be sometimes a decade behind, if not 5 years, whatever. So we did so many of those ballot initiatives to teach them that it was okay to like us and like our issue. But, they're getting mixed messages, and it's up to us to make sure that we give them the right message, that we have a great law in Michigan, Prop 1, MRTMA. It needs to be honored. It needs to be inclusive. There's a reason we put social equity in it. We need to make sure that happens, and it's focused. And yeah, it's and it's still a constant battle. That was one of the things I was so proud of helping to start the MICIA is Michigan's a lot unique compared to a lot of other states. We had 11 years and pioneers before us doing it too, but 11 years of really learning how the political system works. We know how to get signatures. We know how to do ballot initiatives. We know how to do PR. We know how to affect local races. We know how to raise funds for these races. So we're politically astute as an industry as it is. So I knew that we get attacked. Of course, people would like to have maybe only 20 big rows or 10 big rows and huge licensing requirements and caps and all that. And that's constant. It's a constant battle we're going to face this year. But we're in a great position because, for a lot of these guys, it's not like other states that doesn't have that network where you can buy the 5 top lobbyists and get whatever you want done, and no home grows and this and that. Michigan, you can buy the lobbyists, but we're friends with the politicians now, so it's a little different.
Now, before I go to Josey, Jamie, you looked like you had your mute was off a second ago. You have a question you want to throw in?
Well, I actually had a question for both Josh and Josey. I was just curious if we see any issues with Child Protective Services anymore, after MIRTMA in 2018.
Josh, Child Protective Services now?
Very rarely, and I would say that was even before MIRTMA. The DHS changed their employee manual and a lot of their policies in regards to cannabis use, not only medical cannabis use, but cannabis use in general, well before MIRTMA took effect. So I would say it was, probably about 3 or 4 years ago where I really saw a change. Now, that's not to say it doesn't still happen, but it's much less frequent. And since MIRTMA, I can't say that I've had more than a call or two involving an expectant mother or a mother that recently gave birth that had involvement with DHS, but all of those cases were closed out right away without any sort of legal proceedings or anything. And this is the one interesting aspect of it, is that nurses are mandatory reporters, and there are certain things they have to report, but because of policy changes, marijuana use is no longer a mandatory reporting item. So it's up to the discretion of each nurse. Now, if a nurse does make a report because of the THC use, that would get referred to the DHS, CPS essentially, and they're required at that point to start an investigation. And that generally just is asking questions. And I haven't seen anything since MIRTMA go any further than that in regards to cannabis from the DHS or CPS.
There was no bigger defender of children in Michigan than you, Josh Covert. Josey, did you want to address Jamie's question, please?
So if you don't know, I had Cadence is 5 now. So I birthed my daughter 5 years ago in 2016. I consumed an outrageous amount of marijuana the entire time. I talked about it everywhere. I probably smoked more marijuana than I inhaled oxygen. It was ridiculous. I was sick all the time. I thought I was dying. It turns out I was just pregnant. So
yeah, you're pregnant, but you're just a tiny little thing though. Come on. You know it's worse for you.
These women were coming out of the woodworks to me. They were like, Josey, first of all, I should say I had 11 pages of documentation. I haven't walked since I was in the 7th grade. My bones are completely fused together. I have a very enormous cocktail of prescribed medications. And I had my OBGYN and 11 other doctors that I saw say Josey needs to smoke marijuana. I had Josh, I had Chad from Covert Law on the phone. I still got a CPS case. She was embarrassed to be there. She was very nice to me. She let me breastfeed. I sobbed the entire time. I mean, I was still terrified. She came to my home. She was there for 6 minutes and she left. But I was traumatized. I still am traumatized. I cried. My case was closed at a category 5, which is no harm, no risk, no reason to reopen. It is and it's a weird scale, I guess, but 5 is the best and 0 is the worst. And I was closed out at a category 5 in 4 days, which is outrageous. It's never heard of. But it still did a lot to me emotionally. And I still continue to get this influx of women who are birthing their babies and doing what people do, which is consuming cannabis in a safe and reasonable amount. And we're being tested. The meconium was still being tested. They were still getting these CPS cases, and they were lasting maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, a little bit longer than mine, but they were still extremely traumatizing. What's interesting, though, is me being in Benton Harbor. If you don't know, I'm about 15 to 20 minutes away from the Indiana state line. And so what I see is a lot of girls with this idea. A lot of us would just go have our babies in South Bend because they don't drug test in Indiana. It's true. It's honest. I've never had an issue in Indiana. I've probably sent 4 dozen people there because it was so traumatizing for so long. With that being said, I don't get those calls anymore. So what Josh is saying is probably true in some set, but if you are pregnant, do not tell your doctor you consume marijuana. You don't care if you're paraplegic, if you have terminal cancer, if you, it's like anything. Don't admit to smoking and driving. You know, Josh has a lot of that good advice for you. I think it's true, though, that things are less, at least.
Whenever someone says to a mom, I think you are unfit to hold your baby in your own arms, that's going to be traumatizing. And it's wrong.
I think we all remember Josh coming in for the Green case. And if you don't, I can tell you that Josh interned in Kalamazoo for our friends, John Targowski and Dan Groh. Fantastic attorneys, wonderful people, whatever. This was the first case that any of us had really seen him fucking kick ass. He came in there and first of all, that baby was returned in like 6 months. It was all over the national news. If you go anywhere with Steve Green, people will be like, oh, are you Steve Green from the Free Bree stuff? Like, it's so weird. It's still popular. And Bree's 8 years old now. But I think Rick was there, and Rick and I were in the courtroom, and we both felt this like, damn, Josh is a good attorney. And then here we are, 8 years later, and he's ready to save the world again. He's here for Michigan. And don't let him fool you with that UP stuff. He went to college in the UP. He fucking loves being there. Give him a reason to go there. If you're in the UP, please apply.
Yeah. Josh is sitting there going, my gasoline bill doesn't say that's a good idea, but you know.
I'll do it.
I know you will. I've seen you do it. I know you will. So we talked a little bit about the 60% coverage Josh has got essentially in the state, but you also mentioned Barton Morris covering Metro Detroit. Josey, Ryan, are you guys having difficulty finding attorneys that would take up this cause in the Metro Detroit area?
Yes.
Expand, please.
Sorry, I didn't want to risk Ryan saying no. So what we're doing is something that affects 250,000 people in Michigan, and more specifically, over 100,000 people in the Metro Detroit area. There's no way we can make Barton Morris do all of these. And also, each case deserves time and effort, and we really need to put our best foot forward. So the idea that you just submit these and it's automatically done is kind of true, but what's actually true is it's up to the prosecutor to contest it. So it's up to them to prove that what you were doing is illegal today, would be illegal today. So it's not necessarily automatic. They still have the ability to contest it. And having a good attorney on your side would be great. Also, let's remember, we have some really good attorneys here in Detroit. Michigan is famous for a lot of great things. We have good weed. We grow more apples than anybody else. We have more coastline than anybody else. And we have some damn good cannabis attorneys. So hit us up. Let's get together. And we're paying, obviously nobody's doing this for free. We're paying a very decent wage, and we want to do this. We want this to be something that you take home to your parents, that you brag about to your friends, that you drunk text to your ex, whatever. This is something that's really cool, and it's revolutionary, and it's a network of people. Maybe you should join, Rick.
Yeah, I'm already helping you guys out. Yeah. So Ryan, we've just got a couple minutes left before we get to our shameless plug segment. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation we've had today? Because, wow, we've covered a lot of territory.
I also want to say I'm real happy with the foundation and having such a good advisory board. I know Rick will be helping, but also our good friend Jamie Lowell is going to be taking a big role helping on behalf of the foundation. So more than capable. So you'll be seeing a lot more of that, and let's just expunge everybody.
Yeah. Yep. And of course, your program goes much further than expungements. Josey outlined a whole series of things that she does for people. And Josh, naturally, have cape, will travel. The man's got it. He sure does. What a superhero team we've got today, Mike Brennan. Good job assembling this test.
Well, I actually, Ryan did this. I'm just the facilitator today, so I appreciate that support. We still have a few minutes left before we go into well, Ryan's not a newbie. He's been on the show before. We do our shameless plug where you can talk about your whatever you're doing, how people can reach you, and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to ask Josh or any of the others, if there's other attorneys out there that want to get plugged into this. I know we just covered it. Who should they be reaching out to? Because I'm a little confused. Should they? Is it one person or all of you or who?
Josey, I think, would be the one to reach out. She's been doing most of the outreach to contact attorneys and try to get some involvement. So I would suggest that.
Are you trying to match attorneys with clients based just on region? Is that what your primary thing is, Jose?
Yeah, so I don't want to make anybody travel too far. Number one, it cuts in on my attorney fees that I'm paying them. But number two, I want this to be something that's in their community. And the same for cannabis companies. Like, I've seen your guys' social equity plans. It sucks. I think that there was like 3 of them that I was like, wow, this is good. And one of them was Gage. They gave my friend Ryan $50,000. This fits in your social equity plan. And it fits in a way that is literal and obvious, and it does good work for the community.
Well, with that, I think we'll start early because I think getting through our shameless plug with so many guests is probably going to eat up the rest of the time. Let's start with you, Josey. So if anybody wants to reach out to you for sons and daughters, if there are attorneys who want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do it? Do you have a website, email address? Give all that information.
Yeah, so sonsanddaughtersunited.org. I know it's long, but it's easy to spell. Splash expungement will take you to our online application. It's very easy. I will also do this over the phone with you, or however you want to do it. I think that there's a variety of ways to contact us, but the website is the easiest at sonsanddaughtersunited.org. You can also give us a ring at 269-214-4495. It's 269-214-4495. Call Josh Covert's office anytime you need to. We're all there. We can leave, Stephanie's there. She can take a great message for you, and everything's going to be, we're all a really good team. So any of us are really easy to contact. I do think that this is something that is obviously just starting to snowball. And so next time we're here, we'll have a dozen different cannabis companies and attorneys, and we'll have a lot of other things to talk about.
Yeah, we'll check back in and, sometime over the summer and see what kind of progress you made and continue the drumbeat going forward. Josh, why don't you talk about your law firm, how people can reach out to you, website, anything you want to provide?
Yeah, thanks. I work with the Covert Law Firm, or otherwise known as the Michigan Cannabis Lawyers, and we're located in Lansing, but kind of like I mentioned earlier, we take cases all over the state of Michigan. Currently, we work a lot on cannabis businesses, as well as cannabis criminal cases as they come along. And then we've kind of been known to work on a lot of other different things involving family law, CPS cases, basically anything that involves cannabis. You can reach us. The best way would probably be to get on our website. That's the MITechNews.com. And contact us on there. Otherwise, you can give us a call at 517-512-8364. And, we'd be more than happy to sit down and talk with anybody that has any kind of issues involving cannabis. Thanks.
Sounds great. Ryan, you're up next.
All right. I second what Josh said about cannabis, Michigan Cannabis Lawyers. I'm, like I said earlier, I share the office here, and it's a great situation in Lansing. And then with a lot of other great companies like Josey's. But I'm going to give, you can always find me at www.redemptioncanada.com or www.theredemptionfoundation.org. But I want to give a shout out to, non-competing. What's really cool in Michigan, we got one of the pod fathers, Rick Thompson, on the show, but for the longest time, there was just 1 or 2 great podcasts. And now we've got so many great ones, yours, and we've seen ones coming up all the time. So check out my podcast, The Smoke and Rope Podcast, on any of the major, platforms. And then also here at 2:30, another great new podcast, the MICIA. is starting theirs, and I'm going to be on that today. So check that out as well. Thanks.
Busy day for Ryan, huh?
Getting warmed up.
Every day's a busy day for Ryan.
Yeah.
I called him early this morning. He was at the gym. Yeah, gosh. Setting the bar too high.
Well, Jamie, I hear a rumor that there may be something going on at 6 o'clock tonight that you're involved with, right?
Yeah, it's a virtual speed networking mixer that we host every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern. If you want to join us, it's connects.cincymag.com. Request to join in there. And then when you look under Michigan Cannabis Industry Networking Community, you will find that event and information to be a part of it. It's an hour long and we do speed networking. And so you get 5 minutes to chat with several people and build relationships and learn more about their businesses and tell them about your business. And we have our 5-year anniversary, our April issue of Cincy Magazine hitting in the next several days. So keep a lookout for that. You know, it's a commemorative edition because it is Cincy's 5-year anniversary. And so excited to peep the cover of that and for that to hit the web next week. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, the magazine, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes to provisioning centers and folks can pick it up there, or do you have other distribution points too?
Actually, pre-COVID, that was our distribution, and COVID hit, and having a magazine distributed in public places was quite the challenge. So what we do now is we release our magazines each month digitally, and we use geo-targeting. So we're targeting those that are walking into provisioning centers and buying product and pushing them to read about the content that we have in the magazine surrounding the cannabis lifestyle. So it's a different model, and we're seeing a lot of great results from it. And then we'll be taking our magazine back to print over the next several months at some point as things start to relax more and more.
Good to know. All right. And finally, Professor Thompson there. We appreciated your lecture early on, but now you can follow up and talk about all the other fun things that you do.
Denisovian jawbones and geopollens, right?
Yes.
Of course, Jazz Cabbage Cafe is my primary show. I've been doing that for 5 years now. We just completed an interview on the subject of Leonard Peltier, which is a Native American guy who's in prison for 40 years for a crime he didn't commit. We finished Richard DeLisi's episode a week before, which was very important. Richard was just released from prison in Florida for cannabis crimes. And prior to that big interview with Michael Thompson, who we're still trying to get on this particular show too. So lots of things going on there. But more important than that, I think is some of the activism that we have going on. The Redemption Foundation, the Michigan Cannabis Caucus, the Michigan Normal Organization, which is in the middle of a reorganization. There's just so much going on right now. And as Josh mentioned, every time one group of people stops being hassled by the cops, another group seemingly gets hassled by the cops.
Go figure.
Always reason for us to continue to work for betterment of our world. So that's what we're dedicated towards. And by the way, Josey, say hi to Cadence and say hi to that girl Brenda for me too.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
You bet.
No problem. We'll get you back here in a few months and kind of update what's going on. And, of course, when you send out that press release, make sure we get a copy. And now I'm going to do my shameless plug. I'm the editor of the Michigan Marijuana Report, all online. We don't do paper. I mean, when I left the Free Press 20 years ago, I gave up paper. So you can find us at MIMarijuanareport.com. And my email address, if you want to send us hot cannabis news, what you're doing, we're always interested. That would be Mike at MIMarijuanareport.com. I'm the producer of this show with the great help of Jamie Cooper and Rick Thompson, and today with Ryan Basore providing the guest. And I think we have an outstanding topic today, which we will promote vigorously to our audience on Facebook and elsewhere. With all our touch points, we reach something in the neighborhood of 40,000 people. So I think we can help get the word out for you.